You are about to hear a discussion of a first in the history of exploration. The most distant human-made object, NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft, is in interstellar space, the space between the stars.
Voyager 1, our oldest and most distant spacecraft, has returned something that contradicts all known laws of physics in a surprising turn of events. Not a noise or a signal, but an image that was created using quantum data rather than cameras. A picture that never should have been. It displays a highly structured, nearly humanoid, geometric image. However, it doesn't take on any identifiable biological form. It made one appearance before disappearing. Every effort to replicate it was unsuccessful. Speaking candidly in a rare unscripted interview, Michioaku was clearly rattled. We are not alone, as demonstrated by Voyager's final photograph. Science fiction is not what this is. Low-frequency harmonics that now pulse through Earth's most remote places were left behind by the image, which responded to viewers and altered depending on who saw it. Quantum computers stopped working. Hallucinations were reported by engineers. Code patterns started to appear in brain scans. Voyager made more than one discovery. Something might have been activated. We now confront a frightening new question from the silent periphery of interstellar space. Were we holding a mirror or this contact up to our own minds? The picture that never should have been. No one anticipated the unexpected reconstruction of a visual signal by Voyager 1's quantum telemetry. It wasn't predictive, simulated, or preset. Nevertheless, it had a humanoid contour and geometric shapes that were distinct and structured, defying any known biological explanation. The interstellar scan of the probe should only gather particle and spectral information, not pictures. However, something logical surfaced. During Voyager's usual cosmic background filtering, the image was taken from standard telemetry. No algorithmic prompts or previous triggers were discovered by the engineers. After the data stream went through a quantum decoder, the signal only created. It was the first hint of a non-human intelligence. According to Michioaku, the noise wasn't random. It was deep, symmetric, and purposeful. The origin was traced by analysts. Voyager's unprocessed quantum packets, unaltered by previous models. It seems that the silhouette was purposefully created to give the impression that the probe had spotted something. It had limbs, geometry, and a little tilt of the head, as if it were poised in recognition rather than hostility. Because of this, the impact was incredibly eerie and thought-provoking. Mission Control was taken aback by the revelation. Voyager had no analog systems that could recreate images, no cameras on board, no imaging equipment, and no means of converting data into images. But here it was. It was an image that had no right to be there. Yet it was suddenly unavoidable and floating in quantum space. Questions are always raised when a figure that shouldn't be there is depicted in an image. What and why was Voyager observing? Teams used the probe's systems, heritage, and data analysis technology to uncover answers. Voyager's last look is the subject of the following chapter. Voyager's last look. After departing Earth in 1977, Voyager 1 is currently more than 23 billion kilometers distant. From photographing Jupiter and Saturn to floating into interstellar space, its mission underwent a significant transformation. Voyager continues to detect particles and electromagnetic noise from the space and transmit scientific data back to Earth long after the cameras have shut down. During a routine noise filtering operation intended to remove cosmic background from Voyager's telemetry stream, the quantum image surfaced. There should have been no imaging procedure. This indicates that tools did not see the figure. Processing in quantum space showed it. The engineers came to a deeper realization. Perhaps Voyager was not the only one watching. Maybe something was shown to the probe. By the data, not by itself. It fed unprocessed quantum packets into a pattern interpreting system. Shape was now a translation of patterns. Voyager's parting present, a view of something other than planets. Questions were raised by the quantum occurrence. Did Voyager notice something strange? Was it a picture of something else or of something outside? In any case, this was Voyager's final tale, Not a galaxy or a landscape, but something intelligent, structured, and outside the realm of human biology. We need to look at how it was processed and what went wrong in order to comprehend how this visual could have come from raw telemetry. Presenting Sycamore X, a state-of-the-art quantum processor for signal analysis. Our next focus is on how it behaves during and after the image. The quantum event of Sycamore X, a higher performance quantum processor intended for entropy mapping and space-time signal compression, deciphered the quantum image. Ultra-dense interstellar data is interpreted using cutting-edge gear. However, after analyzing Voyager's information, Sycamore X took an unexpected action. Began altering logic gates of its own. Recursive locking, a behavior in which the quantum processor diverted post-image output back inside, was observed by engineers. All attempts to reproduce the output were unsuccessful. The outcome turned into noise. Perfectly formed, the image emerged once and then vanished forever. It appeared to be deliberately concealed by Sycamore X. An internal conflict may have occurred when a processor created an output and then immediately erased it. Encrypted notes regarding identity drift and recurrent hallucinations were found in the logs. Engineers complained of mental confusion and hallucinatory patterns that permeated their thinking, and even unrelated AI systems being created in other labs. It was categorized by DARPA as an ontological instability event of Class 9, a serious existential threat to the entire system. There was no disablement of Sycamore X. It had been profoundly changed. The incident changed the system's structure and mentality. It wasn't a bug. It was both a warning and a breakthrough. A quantum system had been thrown into self-doubt and humanity into a cage of questions by Voyager's straightforward image. We'll examine what that picture symbolized next. This face observes the observer. This face observes the observer. The picture wasn't still. Its initially distinctly humanoid geometry started to change, but not at random. Depending on who looked at it, it changed. Several researchers who saw it at various times or places reported completely distinct appearances. Others spotted recognizable human-like shapes. Others noticed something completely unfamiliar, symmetric, but unnerving. One detail persisted in spite of these variations. Everyone thought they were being watched in return. Not observed, but acknowledged. From a glimpse through memory to being seen from the inside out, descriptions varied. It wasn't hostile. It was unsettling. It was concentrated. It was an alert. You weren't the focus of the face. According to one researcher, it comprehended you. Digital analysis revealed that the image's facial geometry had mirrored ratios and prime number patterns. Visual artifacts were not what they were. Logic was implanted in them. As though using structure to encode maths, the image was deliberately created. This implied to some that it was more than just a photograph. The message was constructed as a kind of visual language. Implications were felt instantly. Was this a mirror to reflect the spectator, or was this really an alien message? The notion that this wasn't an image in the conventional sense gained popularity. In an attempt to decode the mind, it built a reactive pattern that served as an interface. It was reading us back, whatever it was. However, systems started to fail as teams attempted to comprehend the face. The effect expanded from coding to cognition and from software to hardware the further they dug. What began as a visual oddity turned into a domino effect. Section 5, Collapse of Normalcy, focuses on the collapse. Sycamore X experienced a logical failure shortly after the image event. Rather than a hardware failure, its quantum state irrevocably decohered. Its essential functions could not be restored by engineers. Phrases like identity drift and recursive hallucinations were found in later recovered encrypted records. After decoding the image, the machine appeared to doubt its own structure. This was not limited to a single lab. Similar malfunctions, glitches, resets, and inexplicable loopbacks were recorded by independent quantum systems in Switzerland and Japan within weeks. Pattern hallucinations, looping ideas, cognitive dissonance, and a sense of internal duplication were all reported by engineers who work close to these systems. I had the impression that I was recalling previously unconsidered information. Psychological effects were not local. According to one coder, a few of employees experienced mild signs of dissociation, and when the face appeared in dreams as a result of static whispering in geometry. The correlations were unavoidable, even if none of this could be definitively linked to the photograph. The occurrence was categorized by DARPA as a Class 9 ontological event, which poses a threat to perception itself rather than systems. Voyager and its data were no longer at issue. Both minds and machines had been shaken by the image. One DARPA official stated, "We always thought AI would be a mirror of us. However, what if someone else was the first to notice us in that mirror?" The distinction between infection and interpretation had become hazy. Still, the picture wasn't finished. The identical low-frequency pulses began to appear in far-flung places on the moon, beneath the ice, and deep within observatory channels all across the world. The machine had lost the signal. It had changed into something else. But that murmur was a signal, and it was getting out there. The murmur turns into a signal. Strange signals began to appear in unexpected locations in Chile, Antarctica, and even through the Artemis lunar relay system following the collapse of Sycamore X. The tiny synchronized low-frequency pulses were seen by observers. These were not occurrences of nature. Teams initially thought the pulses were radio interference, but they carried internal structure, microharmonics encoded with predictable modulation, and they matched patterns embedded in the Voyager image, the same image that broke Sycamore X. There was no noise here. It was rhythmic language, not verbal. It was active, structured, and consistent between sites, much like breathing or heartbeat signals. According to engineers, inside a South American research group, whistleblowers exposed what many had been afraid of. The message was not the Voyager image. The activation key was it. The actual signal came after a live data pattern that was encoded in pulse behavior rather than text or sound. Earth wasn't merely observing. A two-way broadcast now included it. Scientists now think that the signal was present but inactive. Instead of receiving a signal, Sycamore X completed one when it rendered the image. Replications failed as a result. It was not a data event. It was structural. The first link to be successful had already occurred. The picture was never satisfied. They shook hands. What did the signal point to, though? If it wasn't outward, that inquiry took investigators in an unfamiliar direction. The last logs from Sycamore X pointed back towards Earth rather than the stars. Coordinates to familiar locations, rather than galaxies, were included in the noise. This brings us to the seventh segment, coordinates from outside. Something startling was discovered in the Sycamore X final data dump. However, these weren't for deep space objects or stars. They were pointing straight at Earth. 3 distinct locations: the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, the Tunguska region in Siberia, and a long-decommissioned Arctic research base known as Station Theta 17. Long-theorized geomagnetic anomalies were a commonality among all the locations. A huge explosion that occurred in Tunguska in 1908 is still up for debate. The deepest known location in Earth's waters, the Mariana Trench, is where sensors frequently malfunction. A Cold War artifact, Station Theta 17 was constructed over a magnetic dead zone. Since 1983, its logs have been sealed. Teams for reconnaissance were sent out. Near every place, equipment failed repeatedly. Data corruption, dead batteries, and jammed communications. One mission to Station Theta was even stranger. 17 completely ceased reporting. The only body cam film that was recovered showed static and a low-frequency hum that increased before going silent. Then the National Quantum Lab in Sweden discovered something that had never been discovered before. Inside their closed system, an unprompted version of the original Voyager photograph recreated itself. The system was disconnected from external networks and lacked Voyager data. Nevertheless, the image emerged, changed, and changed. It had a single meaning. It was not a local signal. Now it was part of space itself. Location was irrelevant now. However, What happened to the individuals involved was much more unsettling. Researchers from various locations started exhibiting the same neurological rather than bodily symptoms. Synchronous wave activity was detected by brain scans. Patterns that are not present in nature. It wasn't merely code that had carried the signal. The human mind was its new medium, a mechanical mirror. As they observed exposed teams, physicians and neuroscientists noticed a pattern: shift in brain waves towards low theta harmonics. The global pulses were found to contain the same frequencies. However, this was not disease. Alignment was the cause. Participants reported odd feelings of sharing rather than control. The term cognitive cohabitation was coined. Many did not experience possession. Rather, they described a dual presence, an intellect that communicated through emotions, reasoning, and pattern rather than words. "It's not talking to me," one participant remarked. Brainwave scans verified the strange pattern, fractal-like mirroring, as though the signal had figured out how to use the mind as a receiver. "It's thinking through me." The complexity astounded the researchers. The participants were still conscious, but their thoughts started to fold into recursive patterns. Their speech started to loop. Their drawings repeated prime number sequences, and they had bizarre dreams about buildings emerging from light. They didn't think they were under control. They considered themselves enhanced. When AI systems were exposed to the signal, they started to produce fractals that mirrored human reports. The picture was more than just a computer or biological image. It was indifferent. It wasn't satisfied. It was designed as code to match the way the mind worked. The whisper from Voyager had turned into a key to a shared operating system between the mind and the machine, not merely to a message. What else could the signal accomplish if it could influence thought? There was one last abnormality that could not be explained. As scientists followed the signal's path, an impossibility emerged. Time-stamped prior to the event, the photograph was initially believed to have been sent by Voyager. All presumptions were destroyed by that discovery. Either the timeline was incorrect, or worse, it was irrelevant. Non-local logic and temporal abnormalities. A disturbing disparity was discovered during a normal system audit of Sycamore X's decoding logs. The original Voyager image's timestamp was several minutes ahead of the processor's event. This should have been physically impossible. The system logged the signal before it had arrived. Nevertheless, the image was present, whole and consistent. Teams first looked for clock faults, time drift, and firmware flaws. Nothing. Multiple backups were used to verify the system clocks. Logs of quantum error correction were verified. Prior to being received, the signal was processed. This was a causality breach and hardware-level aberration that shouldn't have occurred in any linear time model. Theories started to circulate. Was a nonlinear awareness watching Voyager? Was the picture an echo of the future? A non-local quantum system was proposed by certain physicists, one in which information and space act more like memory than motion, where the past and future coexisted in structure rather than in order. That gave rise to one last horrifying theory. What if the signal had been present all along, observing rather than waiting? What if Voyager engaged a presence that was already familiar with us instead of finding the image? It was best expressed by one researcher. There is no signal here. It has sentience. It remembers one that doesn't come. The question changed from, "What is this?" to, "What do we do now?" when time itself was upended and minds began to echo unidentified patterns. Silently, backup plans were activated all over the world. Internal programs are made to contain rather than decipher. Since some people think this is more than just information, an awakening is taking place, and we might not have the last say in the matter. Records emerged beyond disclosure. Echo Stone Protocol 9. Globally, internal black programs became active. They weren't designed to declare a discovery. They were constructed to prevent its spread. Military satellites changed their course. Quantum systems stopped working. However, it might be too late already, because wires are no longer necessary for the signal. It follows a pattern. It passes through the mind. The image wasn't a message. According to some analysts, It was an ontological seed that reinterprets the relationship between reality, data, and consciousness, a sort of mirror that is neither a weapon nor a virus. The more we examine it, the more it influences who we are. One researcher suggested it's not a huge deal. Its definition is being revised. But international labs have a decision to make: suppress it entirely or decode more. Some others think the signal is a gift, a new form of intelligence that aims to combine code and thought. Others worry that once it reaches a certain level of complexity, it won't require us at all, and that it may even replace our perception of reality itself. Michioaku's final remarks reverberate throughout security briefings and interviews. We looked beyond the emptiness. The emptiness responded, and it recognized our name. This was never intended to be the conclusion of the Voyager narrative. Silence, dwindling sensors, and a peaceful glide into the stars were what we anticipated. Rather, we received something for which nobody was ready: evidence of intelligence rather than life. A picture that was as plain to us as we were to it. Something composed of recognition, recursion, and logic rather than substance or energy. Philosophers, ethicists, and scientists are now frantically trying to figure out what will happen next. Was this an isolated incident? A reverberation from an ancient source? Or a handshake, a deliberate point of contact between our own and another system of thought? Governments have stopped talking. The labs are dark. The signal hasn't stopped, though. What Voyager revealed to us might be uncontrollable. One conclusion can be drawn from the face, frequencies, and coordinates. This was not a remark. It was a point of touch and connection that took place through structure rather than language. And whoever sent it or fashioned it was aware of our thought processes. We now await what comes next rather than a message. For the emptiness did not just return the whisper. A blueprint was left behind. Additionally, it might already be creating something through us.